Well, thank you for having invited me, and would like to get directly into the issue and um, to start by a definition by two Italian scholars, Catero and Donofrio, who define labor organization uh, in and around Amazon warehouses. And by this, I mean among warehouse workers and drivers as well. Digital tailor for this. And they explain that by this expression, they mean not so much division of labor, which was already widely present in logistics before Amazon, but rather the elimination of every kind of autonomy, workers' autonomy in performing work, which is the distinctive character of work in Amazon's facilities. Um, but at the same time, elements of the so-called lean production and also Toyotaism, such as total quality, the implementation of small incremental degrees in production, and the at least formal involvement of employees in problem solving are not missing. So,
Sorry,
uh,
just realised I hadn't started the
yeah,
record. So carry on.
okay. But what makes so effective Amazon labor organization is the implementation of artificial intelligence and algorithmic management on the old assembly line. By this, I mean that every single gesture and the rhythm of work inside warehouses are dictated by the machines, and in turn, the machines are driven by the algorithm. And at the same time, outside facilities, the stream of goods along Amazon logistic network is driven by the algorithm. And this has three main consequences. Uh, First one is what I call the commodification of labor force. And I mean that workforce becomes a raw material whose individual qualities are totally irrelevant. It doesn't matter if you are old or young, black or white, male or female. It only matters that you are able to provide the amount of surplus value Amazon requests to its employees. And that's why a former English manager of Amazon, interviewed by the Financial Times a couple of years ago, spoke of a human automation. Uh, the second consequence is the high rates of workforce turnover replacement. According to a report published in 2001 and based on data collected in 7 major Amazon warehouses in Italy, only the 30.3% of jobs created by Amazon has been stabilized. Um, and the reason is that the high rate of productivity requested by Amazon makes nearly impossible to survive. Uh, that's why Amazon is forced to a relentless replacement of its workforce. But at the same time, after 1, 2 years of work, many workers decided to resign by themselves. And I remember that when I interviewed Chris Smalls, the founder of Amazon Labor Union in the US, it was a few weeks after his layoff in 2020. He told me his colleagues used to train in the gym. Otherwise, they cannot resist the pressure of work on their bodies. But also recently, an Italian female driver uh, told me that in her first months of work for Amazon, she came back home that tired and cried every night. And she said, I could even cook for my daughter. The third consequence is that algorithmic discipline represents a major obstacle for worker organizing. And Britain, although it has old trade union tradition, is not an exception. In January, I spoke with Stuart Richard of GMB after the first strike in Coventry warehouse, and he told me that GMB has got members in just 6 out of around 30 Amazon warehouses in the UK. But on the other hand, outside Amazon warehouses, the algorithmic management allows Amazon to reroute the stream of goods in real time if some warehouses are blocked by a strike. For instance, in 2014, after the first industrial actions of its German employees, Amazon decided to build new facilities in Poland, close to the German border, so that after that, it could easily bypass German plants in case of strike. The two Italian researchers that I mentioned, Katera and Donofrio, wrote, in the event of a strike, Amazon has no difficulty in temporarily diverting the organizational flows of orders and shipments to other sites, significantly reducing or even eliminating the effects of work stoppages at the single plant level. This constitutes a real and true digital armor, intangible and difficult to pierce with traditional weapons. So the next point is that the most distinctive character of Amazon, along with the use of new technologies, is its strategic thinking and military nature. And the reason of it is quite clear. In an essay entitled Riot Logistics, the three American researchers argue, as a burgeoning literature has established logistics as a military origin, describing activities that bring forces, supplies, and equipment to the field of battle. From this genesis, the term passed into the lexicon of capitalism and now designates the coordination of globe-spanning supply chains, marshalling and integrating widely varied operations to outdo commercial competitors in the struggle for profit. To prevail, logistics systems must circumvent all interruptions to the connection between the extraction of surplus value at point of production and the realization of that value in the moment of exchange. Such systems, thus, as Deborah Cohen insists, operationalize the structural violence of global capitalism. Logistics is, in the word of Jasper Bentz, capitalism's art of war. And even the above-mentioned use of technology to bypass obstacles along its distribution network reflects the strategic nature of Amazon behavior and show us the need of developing a worker strategy. In 2021, I interviewed Charmaine Chua, which is a researcher in logistics at the University of California and collaborates with Amazonians United in the US. She told me that the Amazon's ability to circumvent problems localized in individual warehouses means that if you organize warehouse, you don't have a strategy capable of acting on the same scale as the Amazon supply chain, and that's why we should have a global approach to Amazon. There are other aspects. Amazon's programs for recruiting ex-military personnel and the role of Amazon Web Service as the biggest service provider of the US and Israeli Defense and Security Agency are just another aspect of the military nature of its corporate philosophy. That's why we've analyzed the development of Italian Amazon's distribution network as the effect of a sequence of offensive moves to occupy a growing share of the Italian e-commerce market and defensive moves to prevent and or react to any attacks on the company positions. And being a logistic company, when I say occupation is not merely a metaphorical expression, since it implies a veritable deployment on the ground of warehouses and connecting lines, people, and vehicles, and also a propaganda effort to get the support of mayors, the city council, and public opinion, including greenwashing, charitable acts, etc. Now I'll try to share my screen to show you something. Okay. Does it work? You can see Mappy Amazon. Okay, logistic and strategy, Amazon's Italian campaign on a map. This is a research we've published 1 year and a half ago. And this is the map of around 60 facilities in Italy. The red are the biggest warehouses, the so-called fulfillment centers. The green are the sortation centers or sorting centers. The blue are the delivery station, and the in gray the green facilities. And for every warehouse, you have some data that is when did it open, the average income of the center where they are located, employment rate, the distance from the most important logistic nodes, airports, highways, and so on, the number of employees, and the surface in meter. Okay, this is okay. The development, there are different maps which describe the development of Italian distribution network in Italy. And you will see that the logic is the logic of the occupation of strategic areas and logistic nodes and corridors. Just a moment, because okay, this is the first warehouse of Amazon in Italy. It was opened in 2011, and Amazon decided to open its first facility near to Milan, because Milan represented the biggest concentration of potential customer for e-commerce, and at the same time it is on the route to that from Milan goes to Rome. So it's a strategic position. Then if we scroll, this is the first Prime Now warehouse in the center of Milan, dedicated to the affiliated to Amazon Prime program. And then if we go on, you can see that the logic of the development of the network is the progressive occupation of the two main logistic corridors of the northern Italy, that is from Turin to Slovenia, that is the so-called logistic corridor Padano Superior, and from Turin to Rimini, that is called the logistic corridor Padano Inferiore. And after that, Amazons moved to the south, and in particular, you can see here that they decided to surround Rome, that is the capital and the biggest city in Italy. Well, and this is the situation of the last years. Of course, during the period of pandemics, there was a boom of new Amazon's warehouses, and this is the situation at the moment. Okay.
Okay, so that's it. Have you finished, Marco?
You can see me now?
I can see you now. Yeah, you've been speaking for 20 minutes. Have you finished, or do you need to go on?
No, still 5 minutes and I've finished.
Okay, fine. Sure. Yeah.
Well, if Amazon bases its effectiveness and success on a strategic thinking, of course, workers should do the same, should adopt a strategic thinking as well to counterbalance Amazon's strength and exploit its vulnerabilities. Which vulnerabilities? I focus on three. The first one is supply chain vulnerabilities. In our research, we've drawn the consequence that Amazon's distribution network is very similar to what mathematicians call free-scale networks. That is, networks which do not collapse even if you damage many of their nodes, but can easily collapse if you block a small number of nodes. Called hubs and characterized by a high number of links with the other nodes of the network. In the US, for example, Amazonian United said that the hubs of Amazon network are the small delivery stations which surround the big city. And by analyzing Amazon network in Italy through the graph theory, we've drawn the same conclusion. That means that the small delivery stations around the big centers are one of the biggest vulnerabilities of Amazon. So if you block through a strike or an industrial action those nodes, this is a big damage for Amazon operations. The second vulnerability is sensitivity to image issues. Like an occupying army, Amazon needs a certain degree of support by the political and social environment which surrounds its plans. So every shadow cast on its brilliant image could be used as a weapon by the workers to reach their objectives. And in Italy, we've had a couple of experiences where this strategy has proven to be effective. One is the struggle of about 200 contract workers of Colleferro fulfillment center near Rome after they've been laid off. And the third vulnerability is, I would say, sensitivity to sudden reactions by the workforce. I would underline the importance of the time factor in Amazon, and I base this idea also on the concept of the ODA cycle. ODA is an acronym for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act, and it's a concept by the former US Air Force pilot and strategist John Boyd. But what does it mean, since the importance of time factor? In the old Fordist factory, trade union work is a relentless effort of solving everyday problems which permanent workers face in their workplaces, from the simplest to the matters of life or death. Sometimes there are accelerations, but then finally the used rhythm has to be restored. In the e-commerce factories, as some scholars call Amazon's warehouses, this method is quite ineffective, as most employees are contract workers, so that every day some of them are recruited and enter the warehouse, and some other are laid off. At the same time, we observe what I would call a class consciousness cycle, where most newly recruited workers initially are delighted of working for a well-known international brand and ready to satisfy each request by Amazon, open to get a permanent job through that. But after a while, a small group of them begin to be aware of problems, that is pressure to keep productivity rates tremendously high, health issues, and above all, sometimes Amazon cuts their work shifts, and at the same time, workers find out that other people are ready to be hired and replace them. And we've observed there are crucial moments where quite regularly a small number of workers react, and you have to seize the moment. Or sometimes instead, as with some drivers that I met a couple of months ago in Tuscany, the issue is we are a small group of militant our colleagues, but the question is how, and above all, which will be the right moment to do that. Okay, so I hope I make you understand what I mean when I say the importance of the time factor. Okay, the conclusion. Of course, these short observations are just a small contribution to the development of a union strategy in Amazon warehouses. But I hope it helps at least to underline that we need a strategy. And the example, the mentioned case of Germany and Poland shows that it has to be an international strategy. Uh, and that's why we have regular connection with foreign activists and trade unionists all over the world. And that's why I'm very pleased to discuss with comrades from different countries today. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Marco. That was really, really interesting and informative. Right, if anybody wants to say something, could you either put your electronic hand up or wave at me? I can't see everybody at the moment. Or anybody would like to ask anything? I think everybody's stunned into silence. Nigel.
Somebody has to break the ice.
Yeah.
I'm very good at breaking silences, even if what I have to say is much value sometimes. No, in the UK, I mean, Marco, hi Marco, good to see you. Marco mentioned Coventry. There's been a dispute in Coventry going on for quite some time now, and the lead shop steward there, Asian Farouzia Uddin. She speaks really well. I've seen her on rallies. I haven't been to Coventry. I must be honest. It's a long way from where I live, but she speaks very well. She's got quite fighting position, demanding £15 an hour, and they've grown in membership from I think 200 last year to over 1,000 this year. So there's a good level of recruitment there through a militant stand within the Amazon depot where they work, which is quite central. If you don't know England, it's quite a central. It's interesting what Marco was saying about the strategic location of these warehouses. Coventry's in a very strategically kind of central position in the UK, especially England. It's within easy reach of most of England, actually. But it would take me 3 hours to get there. So it's quite a long way, but that's not a long way in international standards. So that's that's something worth noting. But I was very interested in what Marco was saying about the number of Amazon warehouses that have got a GMB presence, being quite small. It's not even a quarter of them. So that is concerning in terms of a successful struggle, isn't it? And targeting the effectiveness of your work. I don't know enough about Coventry and the particular dispute there. I just do know it's been well supported by other trade unionists. There have been mass pickets outside the factory, really quite sizable ones. That's quite interesting. I think when we're looking at targeted work, I'm often reminded of the strike that took targeted action, a strike that took place at Rolls-Royce, which again is in the Midlands, the aircraft engine manufacturer. And I think what they did there, it's just an example from Unite. I mean, I think it was just a handful of really highly trained workers took strike action, fitters, the people who mend the machines when they go wrong. And it shut the factory down, and the workers won their demands because they needed the fitters. The fitters were crucial workers, and the factory couldn't run the factory couldn't run without them because it was making obviously aircraft engines, and so that was, I think that's what Marco's talking about, targeted action. And it's interesting what he said about the smaller depots, targeting them for recruitment and using that idea as a place to put your energies if you're organising. Starting, and in that sense, starting relatively small and then building from there could be a good approach. I think it's something that, that smart action, trying to be as smart as the capitalists around it. I think another little comment I would make, historically, it really does remind you of the early Victorian Industrial Revolution, which is something I know something about, and the conditions of work. And workers actually, it seems like in Amazon, being driven to leave or crumble or become ill. And in the early Victorian period, of course, workers being worked to death, which happened in the early Victorian period. So there's that sort of view of workers as machines, and that fits with like the current philosophy of capitalist philosophy, behaviorist philosophy. That basically we're machines, and therefore we're just cogs in a machine, and some are fortunate enough to be important cogs, and most of us are not fortunate enough to be central in that sense, as opposed to seeing us all as vibrant humans who have a very rich kind of psyche and being. And I just wanted to mention that because I think it's important for us to remember that, when we're in struggles with capitalists, that they dehumanize workers, and they have no principles, absolutely none. It's just capital, it's profit. There's no kind of emotional sense, there's no kind of sense of valuing workers at all. In terms of factory workers, I mean, and productive workers, more so than they're if you like, the elite, who are at the top of organizations. Those are just a few comments. I hope somebody else can come in and maybe add something to what I've just said. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nigel. David, you're next.
Well, look, comrades, thanks, comrade, for a very sort of commanding overview of how Amazon has advanced, and the challenges that we face. I mean, I want to make a few points based on some discussion I had with a Amazon driver who was also a taxi driver. That's how I got into a discussion with him. And it was all a discussion around the port in San Francisco and how he was a driver and had to work 24 hours. And he explained the strategy that was adopted there with Amazon, and that they used to have commanding centers. But they found that what I mean by that is that very large warehouses, but they were tending to then decentralize these warehouses because they wanted to be able to deliver within 24 hours, anything that a consumer would want. In other words, the deadly part of Amazon is partly the conspiracy against the workers and so forth, but it's all being planned, and capitalism has many strategic plans, or at least different parts of capital have these strategic plans, which, as you've shown in your mapping, are very almost scientifically drawn to be able to make maximum profit, and that profit is driven by the market. In one sense, it's not commandist; it's driven from below, in the sense that you and I are wanting to get a book or to get some part of a computer or something, and that we would like to get it as soon as possible. And they can deliver it at 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, this then leads to the deconcentration of the warehouses in and around San Francisco, because they do not want to deliver at 5 or 6 o'clock at the time of traffic jams and so forth. So you won't see, Amazon drivers out at that time. What they do is they drive up to about 3 o'clock, then they drive after 7 o'clock after that time period, so that they can maximize, or let's minimize, the time that's taken to get from the warehouse to the customer. So it's driven by planning, but also from demand from below. And I must say, when I heard this, I felt quite guilty about actually getting some objects which I could have actually gone out and got myself, a day or two later. It wasn't critical that I would have bought it at that time, but we are then, through market relationships, we're then driving this whole model because we would like to get something as soon as possible, a book which we'd like to read before, we give a presentation or something of that kind. And it shows that capitalism has advanced planning at the moment. From the working class point of view and from the union's point of view, we're trying to catch up to this, because we're seriously disadvantaged because we don't yet have that solidarity. Although I'm pleased to hear of the solidarity at Coventry, that's absolutely marvelous. But we don't yet have that. There's fragmentation of the working class, and we've got to overcome this by superior knowledge and coordinated solidarity, so that we can, meet the challenge. What we do find is that I can only use the word deconcentration. In other words, it was concentrated, and they tried to deconcentrate the warehouses, time the drivers so that they're driving on a 24-hour phase. And that they are driving often at late into the night, or more to the point, early into the morning. It's incredible the stress that's put on these workers, and then that means that these workers are then operating on a 12-hour phase, which apparently is what's happening now in Durban in South Africa, where they're trying to get the workers in the harbour to work on a 12-hour shifts. And then within those 12-hour shifts, there's no overtime, because then they still manage to be able to squeeze out something. In South Africa, the minimum hours are meant to be 48 hours, and they can somehow squeeze that in so that there's no overtime. And they can crush the workers in that way, in terms of wage exploitation. All of this, I think, ends up with the commanding point that we have to organize, both more sophisticatedly nationally and also internationally, and carry the advantages, the advances which some of the workers have made in Amazon in America, and transfer those into places like in Italy, where there's, as you've explained, there's this, the plan for distribution, and to be able to coordinate also between the ports and between smaller towns and the like. These are all challenges which we face in communication, to be able to bring, the working class into action, against such an octopus that we face. Thank you.
Right, thanks, David. Peter.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks, Marco, for that introduction. Just a short point. It seems to me that to get workers organised, it means that there's two choices, really, I suppose, simple choices. Dissatisfaction within the workplace, and satisfaction with the union that's attempting to get them organised. In my opinion, it's considerably difficult for them to choose either option. Probably for the same reason, they don't trust either. It's a shame that it seems to have come to that, but we've got a situation in this country at the moment where there's a genocide taking place in Palestine, and the Labour Party supports it. The trade union movement doesn't obviously oppose it because it's been absolutely quiet about it. And how on earth do you expect people who are working in any workplace, never mind Amazon, to support it or join an organisation who keeps its mouth shut about such an atrocity taking place. They've probably got, like I have, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And I'll tell you something, if I was one of them, I'd be, well, it's like I say, it's difficult to choose. It really is difficult for them to choose because the options that were short of them in the UK, I can't speak for Italy. Perhaps Italy's a different proposition, I'm not sure. I can't speak for any other country either, including America. But I can speak for this country. If this country doesn't get shot to stomach quick, we're going down the pan. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Is there anybody else wanting to speak at the moment? If not, Marco, do you want to make any further comments? Oh, hang on, Nigel. Right, go, Nigel, you go next.
Can I come back briefly? I mean, I understand completely what Peter's talking about there. And I mean, there's a lot of reaction to Starmer's recent comments around Thatcher that he made in the Telegraph, admiring Thatcher. I mean, and this is, in a way, I mean, on the left, it's opened up a discussion subject, because you can't ignore that. This is incredible. And he is more neoliberal than she was. He would go further than she ever would have done, actually, Starmer. I'm absolutely convinced of that. So that's one thing. Trades councils and trades unions, they have been quiet. I mean, we've got a motion through our trades council that's going to Unite, which has been passed by the regional Unite, which is highly critical of the Labour Party, as well as British State and those kind of things. So there is some movement there, but Unite, which is the union I'm talking about, seems hesitant to make public pronouncements on it. I think they're divided. I think the leadership of Unite's divided. I think Sharon Graham on one side and some of her supporters, but others, are divided on the issue. So there's a real problem there. I mean, another thing I would say is I don't buy anything from Amazon, and I never have done. I've bought one thing from Amazon. I never have done really, and I never will do. So I mean, that's a message we need to get out much more strongly. I'm around people, you know what I mean, all the time who I could talk to about this. Quite apart from a more political approach, a personal approach, you could talk to people about it. And there's other ways you can buy things online without using Amazon. If you need to buy things online. But I'm a massive fan of going to the local shops. I'm lucky to have some, and I can do that. Got transport, this sort of thing. So I mean, I suppose in that sense, I mean, I think politics is about the big stuff, but it's also everything you say and everything you do, in terms of the people who are around you. I suppose that's the point I'd like to make there.
Thanks, Nigel. Lars, do you want to go next?
Yeah, fine. I'm thinking there's maybe that's further down the road or something, but there seems to be a need for like a movement towards international collective bargaining actions. Because I mean, it's not only Amazon, of course. Amazon. This is about Amazon, but most big companies that are international use some of these tactics. Maybe they haven't come as far, but I don't know. Just Volvo can say, if you don't accept the cuts or whatever, we'll just move our production somewhere else. We'll just move our production in some other place in the country or to another country, or so like the need to organize like collective bargaining in multiple countries against the same company is I think something that needs to happen. How that's going to happen, who knows yet.
Okay, thank you, Lars. And anybody else, or shall we invite Marco back, see if there's anything you want to say on what's been said so far?
Okay.
Cool, yeah.
Well, I would deal with 3 points. The first one was raised by Nigel, as he mentioned the Industrial Revolution, and those particularly tremendous work conditions. By this point of view, Amazon adopts a very flexible tactics in the different countries where they open new facilities, and somewhere, for example, Saudi Arabia, Amazon work conditions are very similar to those of the 19th century. Recently, the International Consortium of Investigative Journalism and Amnesty International published 2 reports where they described the working conditions in Amazon warehouses, and they have denounced that in Saudi Arabia, Amazon imports workforce from Bangladesh and other poor country, most Asian country, and they are subjected to the rules of kafala, which is the ancient rules, Saudi rules on workforce, and they are reduced as slaves. It's a real form of slavery. So when as Amazon open new warehouses in European countries, they know that they have to do with trade union traditions, and they have to respect in a way some rules. But when they open new facilities in other countries, they have no mercy, and they their behavior was a medieval behavior towards workers. The second point, which was raised by David and then again by Nigel, is and very often when I take part to discussion meetings, somebody asks if, in my opinion, is correct to buy from Amazon. And David said that if I understood that he feels guilty of buying from Amazon. Well, I don't think we should feel guilty of buying on Amazon, as I don't think we should feel guilty when we buy from companies which exploit their workforce, because this is the rule. This is the normality in capitalism. And a couple of years ago, I took part to a public discussion in Bologna with Polish trade unionists, and some people asked the same question. So, in your opinion, can we continue to buy from Amazon, and shall we boycott Amazon? And her answer was really significant. She said, "We don't need a boycott campaign against Amazon, but we need your support to our struggle. So don't boycott Amazon, but support our struggle, and if you can, support our solidarity fund, so that we can go on struggling and reach our objectives." The last point is that Lars Erik mentioned the delocalization. So many companies, many European companies, can threaten workers, saying, if you mobilize, we can move the production somewhere else. This is one other vulnerability of Amazon, because Amazon cannot move their warehouses far away, and so this is another demonstration that Amazon is in a way a big power, but at the same time it can be beaten, and it has got weaknesses, and this should be the focus of our strategy and our trade union strategy to reach our objectives. Okay, thank you.
Thanks again, Marco. Anybody else want to say anything? We don't seem to have any hands up. No?
Well, the last thing I've forgotten to say is that together with the comrades of International Standpoint, we are trying to develop a new project on platform workers, which is an issue very close to the issue of work inside Amazon warehouses due to the massive implementation of new technologies and artificial intelligence and so on. And at the same time, you know that the European Union is discussing a new directive to dictate some rules on platform work against the super exploitation of workforce. So this is opening a space. Platform workers like Amazon workers in Italy, for example, are one of the few layers of workers that have been mobilizing over the last years. So I think it should be very interesting to focus our attention on this small but significant part of the working class. And of course, we are open to collaborate with the WIN comrades and who is interested in it.
Okay, oh, I've got two hands up now. David, would you like to come in next?
Just a question. I raised the point about these 12-hour shifts. Have you found this in your experience? I mean, how does the wage contract be, constructed around the incredible hours that Amazon is expected to work if they're going to deliver within 24 hours? because that's what they advertise that they'll be able to do. And it doesn't mean that workers work from, let's say, 8 o'clock at night, right to 5 o'clock the next morning, which is, I think, what the workers in San Francisco are doing who work for Amazon.
You want to answer that, Marco, before Lars speaks? Do you want to just answer that point? All right, Lars, do you
Can
want
I
to
add
go?
something to that, Pam? Can I add something to
You
David's
can.
question?
All right,
Yeah.
Lars, can Andros just come in first because he's not spoken yet? Go on, Andros.
It's just to add a question which is very similar to David's. Marco, you said that in Saudi Arabia, the conditions of the workers in the Amazon factories and centers anyway is more similar to slave labor than to wage labor. Can you describe a bit the conditions there and what is actually happening with this in these places?
Thanks, Andros. Lars, do you just want to say what you want to say, and then maybe Marco can take all the points up together? Yes, do you want to come in next? That's it.
Yeah, I was just wondering, platform workers is it like taxi or delivery service, that sort of platform, like digital platform, or is it like oil platform?
Okay, thank you. Marco?
Well, first I answer to Lars, Eric. Well, platform workers means delivery workers, Uber workers, micro workers, and so on. And the issues raised by David and then by Andros. 12 hours issue, I think, is more an American issue. As I said before, Amazon implant new warehouses in a country, and it tends to adopt the local rules. So in Italy, but in general in Europe, the trend is that Amazon implements the national agreements. So, for example, in Italy, shift driver work 8-9 hours per day, and wages are quite high, and that's why many workers would like to work for Amazon, because you know that Italy is the only one European country where from 1990 to 2020 average wages didn't grow. Okay, so for young people, 25 years old people, to work for Amazon seems to be very good in terms of wage and contracts. So the main problem in Italy, the main problem raised by workers and by trade unions is the productivity rates, the rhythm of work, and then contract work. It is work is very precarious. So people cannot plan. A young family cannot plan its life counting on permanent work for Amazon. Well, Andros asked about Saudi Arabia, and there are two key aspects. One is that in Saudi Arabia warehouses, we observe the same problems that I mentioned in European and American warehouses: work condition, productivity, pressure on the workforce, amplified, of course. But another key aspect is that Amazon do not recruit directly its employees, but it uses work agency which imports workforce from countries like Bangladesh, Nepal. Those people fly to Saudi Arabia. They are convinced that they will be recruited by Amazon, that they will work directly as Amazon employees, but in reality, they are recruited by those work agencies, and all the conditions, not just inside the warehouses, but also outside. That is, for example, houses, services are very, very bad, and they are subject to those rules of kefala that I mentioned. And this means that if they decide to resign, they cannot resign, and they cannot come back to their countries. And sometimes those work agency request them to pay a fine if they want to resign and go back to their family. One of the reports that I mentioned speaks about this Nepalese worker who wanted to go back home, as is one of his son was ill, and he had to wait for months. And when he finally could come back home, his son was already died.
Okay, thanks, Marco. Anybody else? Any more questions? Comments? No, it looks like we're talked out, doesn't it? Yeah, no, there's nobody putting the hand up. If nobody else wants to say anything, I don't really intend to prolong the meeting. Well, we can't really if nobody's saying anything. There's definitely nothing else. Do you want to say a few closing words, Mark? I know you've just spoken. Do you? It doesn't look like to me anybody's going to ask any more questions, but they may just stick their hand up in a minute with a bit of luck. Is there any other remarks you want to make? No?
No, I don't think so.
No. Okay, well, there doesn't seem to be anybody wanting to speak, so I think we seem to have reached the end of the discussion for today. Yeah, no, going, gone. Right, well, anyway, thanks very much, Marco, for leading off on that subject. There's obviously lots of questions people needed answering to understand the actual workings of Amazon and the way that they mega exploit people. I, for one, cringe at ordering anything from Amazon. I don't do it unless I really have to. So again, thanks, Marco. Thanks everybody for your contributions. You're all the welcome. So we're going to meet again next week at 4 o'clock, and we are having somebody to talk about the anniversary of the Belton Road. David, are you there? Do you want to? David Hempson is organising the speaker. If David's there, do you want to say something about next week, because you know more about it than I do?
Yeah, excuse me, not appearing. We're having a heat wave here in Johannesburg, and I'm topless. But yes, I do have a willing speaker for next Sunday, and that is Patrick Bond, who's quite an authority on Chinese investment internationally, and it's I think a very important question, because the Belt and Road Initiative was taken at a time when it appeared that China would be able to get paid back for the loans that it had made to advance infrastructure development. And now it seems that those loans are not being paid back. And so that China is now in the same embarrassing position as the IMF in terms of demanding repayment, for loans, or the taking over of parts of the economy in Kenya or in Sri Lanka and so forth. So this is, some real politic, which is being developed in terms of the BRI. And after 10 years, it's worthwhile having a look at the balance of the pluses and minuses, of the BRI initiative, both for China itself as the bureaucracy, and also for the developing countries which have, gotten themselves engaged with the BRI. Just one last point. Chinese investment is by far, it seems, the most active capitalist, and we have to use the word capitalist, investment in Latin America and Africa at the moment. And it's, this investment is absolutely tied with an anti-union policy, a destruction of unions as they exist in different parts of Namibia and the rest of Africa, and extreme exploitation of indigenous populations. Okay, so it looks as though, that will be a good discussion for next week.
Okay, thanks, David. So that's the same time next week. The notification will come out for that meeting midweek, but it'll probably be the same link as this week. So I think that's everything for now. Thanks again to everybody for your participation. Hope to see you same time next week. Bye for now. Bye.
Bye, comrades.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.